Greetings, Grand Risings, great day ahead. It is Saturday, the 10th of October, 2020. And I'm recording this today because for me it's a very significant day. It's 1 year since I moved into my current studio flat. And if it's the first time joining me, my name is Natural Mystic. I am bouncing back. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for watching, liking, sharing and subscribing if you do. And I call you all my love bugs because my nickname is Ladybug, so you're all called love bugs. Today is World Mental Health Awareness Day. And it's very significant that the 2 days kind of coincide with each other. Now, mental health is something that we hear get chucked about, or mental ill health is something that we don't always hear get chucked about, if you hear what I'm saying. We have different forms of looking at what we think is being mentally healthy. And what I always ask is, on whose scale? Who measures my mental state, my happiness levels or my depressive levels? Now for me, what I've noticed, it's all about the language that I was using to describe myself. So let's rewind back to when I was 19 and I met somebody. I moved out of the family home, I moved in with them, I was going to university, I was working part-time. For those of you who have had, little snoop at my channel, there are little snippets of my past and things I've been through. Before I was 25, I was £100,000 in debt. That's in with creditors, drugs man, road man, family, friends, you name it, they all were owed something, and it was finances, money. I didn't realise what a depressive state of mind I was actually in, not just throughout the relationship, but prior to meeting this particular individual. And I've realised that I've lived in a place of darkness for quite a long period of my life. In fact, the majority of my life. And it's only of late have I been sort of more accepting and more open about the word depression. Now, depression is something that I feel that comes and goes and can go completely or be cured of or in remission, depending on how you want to think of certain things that we're afflicted with emotionally, physically and mentally. So I've always known that I've been a bit grumpy or miserable, maybe don't smile as often as I could have done as a child, because a lot happened. Let's just leave that there. Teenager, pre-teens, teenage years, a lot happened. And then I met somebody and then even more stuff happened. And I'd never dealt with the stuff that happened for the first 20 years of my life. So then meeting somebody and bringing my own existing baggage, his baggage, into a very toxic situation with both of us being young, taking on a lot of responsibility, which I think was our way of showing people that we could do stuff, we could have things. Being adult was like having a mortgage and a nice car, but nobody told you that being an adult was how you handled situations, how you handled your emotions, how your heart feels inside your chest, how your head and how your brain feels inside your skull. Literally, to me, those are the elements of adulthood that was never discussed with me. I was never really one to share what it is that I was going through, or how, just because I knew how it all started. I was part of it. I was partly at blame or at fault in regards to how I was feeling. I was a contributing factor It wasn't just my environment or the people around me, or, you know, there were a few things that I realised that I was actually impacting me and making what I was diagnosed with a little while back was depression. It was making it worse. Now, this is the thing about these labels and these stigmas and these boxes that we check in regards to our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts, and the way it is that we live our life, is that nobody ever comes along later on in life and says, you're no longer depressed. So how do you know if you're well or better, or if you ever can not be depressed anymore? I think I smell something burning. I'll be back. It's okay. It wasn't burning. It was just my imagination, which again, you know, that's how the mind works. So that was a prime example of rather than sit here thinking that something may be burning and then stressing myself out, which then adds to my depression, if you see what I'm saying. Pause. Go check. Your audience won't mind. They'll feel better when you come back on the other side with a smile on your face saying, no, nothing's burnt. But yeah, I didn't ever think that I'd have a breakdown. More than once. And there were different levels. Again, there's layers in it of this depression and of anxiety, of nervousness about life, not trusting self. That's what it boiled down to, okay? I'd made some really poor decisions. I use the word poor because if I'd have dealt with the levels of the onion or the layers of the onion of depression in my formative years, you know, through school, college, university, if I'd have actually gone to maybe counselling at that point, if I'd have gone to a support group, if I'd had mentoring from somebody as an elder, if I had a sisterhood, a trusting circle where I could share what had happened and learn to not feel guilty about it and learn to forgive myself a lot earlier for things that had happened. Not that I created them or instigated them, but they had been afflicted upon me and put me through things as a child where I wasn't able to say no for a very long time. So I think I lived in fear. And as I'm sort of going through this conversation with you all or through this recording, I'm actually kind of figuring it out along the way as well. So hence why I kind of deliberate sometimes with certain words that I'm using. But yeah, I lived with an element of fear of what my family would think, my parents, you know, people at school. When you're at primary school, you don't want them to know certain things about you, like the teachers, you know. You don't want to be treated differently. And I felt like I was treated differently enough anyway, just because that's how I felt. Excuse me, that is how I felt. I felt like I was being treated differently because of something. And I was being treated differently because of something, but nobody ever discussed what that something was. Nobody ever sat me down and explained, or not explained, but let me know why they were being so overprotective. And I knew why they were being so overprotective, but it was something that I didn't want to bring up as a child. I didn't want to talk about it. I did want to talk about it, but I didn't know if my parents wanted to talk about it. There seemed to be a lot going on in their world. And I didn't feel important, or not that I didn't feel I don't want to make my parents look bad through all of this. They didn't know what to do because they were dealing with their own stuff, like emotionally as well as real life, having children and bills and family and that. So they'd buried everything that they had been through and what they were going through. So I just followed suit. You kept on a brave face, you wore the mask. You know, your clothes and your presentation to the outside world was pristine, clean, flawless. he didn't want people to kind of peel back that layer and see that you were a bit tainted, a bit tarnished. Just felt a bit dirty, to be quite honest with you. Not because I wasn't washing, or you know what I mean, but yeah, felt smudged, like someone had put a mark on me, or there was a scent, but I didn't see it or know it, if you know what I mean. I knew it was, I was emitting it, and I knew that it was there, that invisible smudge, that mark, that. And like I said, because my parents hadn't dealt with what they needed to deal with for themselves, it just added more layers to my onion. So then you meet somebody and they kind of rescue you for a moment, or take you out of your existing environment and your existing thought processes, and they show you stuff and teach you stuff, and it becomes exciting, and you think that this is the life that you want to live, when all along you just want to go to university, you know, have a nice little flat when you qualify, and buy a little car, just go on holiday. You know, I wasn't really thinking about relationships and all that sort of stuff. So I delved into all of that way too early, that whole responsibility, that whole mortgage and keeping up with the Joneses and being the first, you know, the first to go to uni, and the first to have a mortgage, and the first to have a finance car, and the first to have this, and you know, like it was a one-upmanship sort of thing in my head. But that's not where my family values were. That was not how I was raised. I wasn't raised to just have stuff. But then when you see, you know, people around, as in your peers and your friends, or, you know, what the family over there's got, and we live differently. We were grateful for all that we had. My family worked hard. I mean, I've had a job since I was 9 years old, so, you know, it wasn't slave labour before anybody start thinking anything stupid. I enjoyed going down to the market and helping out, so eventually I got a little bit of pocket money each week that I turned up. And it just carried on ever since. I'm now in my 40s, and I think I've been unemployed. And I say unemployed because that's been a choice, to not have a job at certain times, if that makes sense. And you would have thought that during those sort of, but it was two different stints roughly. The first one was like nearly a year, 10 months, and then the second time I was unemployed, it was like, I think about 7, 8, 9 months. I think it was no longer than 9 months. But what I should have been doing, like while on benefits perhaps, or while having, you know, support financially to help me get by, was to go and get counselling. And these are the things that aren't offered when you're on a budget, or when you can't really afford private. They sent me to people who didn't look like me, number one. They sent me to people who hadn't been through what I'd been through. They sent me to people who didn't come from where I came from, and I didn't relate. At one point they actually sent me to see a male counsellor, knowing my history and what it is that I'd been through in regards to men and the opposite sex. There was nowhere that I filled out a form that said I didn't want a male counsellor. And then they'd question me, like, why? He's just as capable as all of our other counsellors to help you. So I'm supposed to speak about my most intimate self with a man who took away my innocence. Not the actual man who took away my innocence, but with a man, another man, do you see what I'm saying? Like, so again, I feel that played with my head. It played with my feelings. It didn't make me trust anybody now at this stage, not even the services that are so-called provided. There was no counselling after the counselling, even, you know, it'd be in the middle of the day. I'd leave work, get permission from work to go, because you have to tell them everything. You know, you can't just show them a letter and say that I'm going through some stuff and I need this time away from the building, away from you all, to go and sort my life out, or at least attempt to. So I'd rush across the town from where I was working. Sorry, peeps. From where I was working to where the counselling office was. And I'd pull up and there would be these beautiful fancy cars outside with all these latest registration plates. And there's me with a bag of debt around my neck going, these people are just not going to get it. Before I'd even gone in, I felt like they're just not going to get it. They're not going to get me. And we just used to talk about all the stuff. There was no resolution. There was no emotional management. And then I was expected to just go back to work after an hour of just offloading. And I was supposed to feel better, I suppose, after each session. But I'll be honest, I gradually just felt worse and worse. And the final straw, as they say, that like broke the camel's back, was when I turned up for a counselling session and my counsellor announced that she was having a baby. Well, I could clearly see that. I don't think she'd put on weight. Like from eating, if you know what I mean. And the session prior to that was talking about, you know, children and potentially having them when I was younger. And yeah, just some of the stuff I'd been through around, you know, pregnancy and children and stuff around. But she didn't even realise the impact that she'd had on me just visually. So I clammed up, innit? How can I sit there talking about my darkness when she's sitting there looking all glowing and blossoming and ready to pop and bloom new life into the world? I can't drop that on her. That's going to affect her baby. I think that's where my brain just constantly... I'm not a people pleaser, but I'm very much aware of the impact that I leave and have on others. And I was on a Zoom with a dear sister friend of mine yesterday. And a lot of stuff came up and she was like, you have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. You've not dealt with it. And when it comes to debt, it's not an emotional problem. It's a physical problem, which affects me emotionally. If that, you know, it's a mental problem that affects me emotionally. Having debt's horrible. And in all honesty, I could have paid it off by now. I really could have done. If I'd literally have lived like how I'm living now, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have debt today. I probably wouldn't have needed to declare bankruptcy. And these are all the things that each year you think you're doing better and it's not so bad anymore. But again, everything just has affected my interactions, my relationships with people and my relationship with myself. So today isn't about doom and gloom, although it's has been to a certain extent. It's just try not to judge people when they're not always smiling, or when they don't say things the right way or the right tone, or they might snap, or they might be a bit quiet, distant, antisocial, introvert, sometimes even extrovert. And it's not a matter of not knowing how to manage or balance and deal with the different emotions and personalities within us and characteristics. It's finally getting to that stage where you can actually say, I'm truly not depressed anymore. You can look at the areas of your life where you've improved, whether it be work, home, financially, mentally, physically, all of that stuff. And moving further and further away from your internal darkness, that little space in your heart and in your head and in your stomach that you water it, it grows. And it's, like I said, it's 2020. We've dealt with what they're calling COVID-19, or a version of another COVID, because if it's 19, it's not the first one, obviously, is it? They've also, the coronavirus is also what's this time, this kind of, it's been called a disease, a virus, a type of influenza. And I hope this recording doesn't get banned or blocked through talking about this stuff, and it's not my opinion on it. I'm just recording what is happening currently in the world. And I suppose they're saying that near enough 42-ish thousand, maybe 45, nearly 45,000 people have potentially passed away, died, gone to the Creator, met their Maker, with contributing factors potentially due to what's happening. Now, I'm using words like potentially. I'm not a doctor or a nurse. I haven't spoken to any doctors or nurses directly. I fortunately haven't got any family members who have passed away due to, like I've said, to what is out here. I have had a family member who passed away from pneumonia, and they passed away at home. We knew they were going to go, so it wasn't a surprise. It saddens us. However, we feel a little bit of comfort in the fact that, what goes on their death certificate isn't going to be questioned in that, or, or investigated, or, worried about and concerned about. We're satisfied with the way my auntie transitioned. And when you hear the number of people that have passed away so far this year, because they're telling us, they're counting, they're making sure we know. I have questioned, where are the other deaths, for want of a better expression? Where are the people that have died from other things? Heart attacks, diabetes, strokes, brain tumours, aneurysms, you name it. And the biggest one of all, which the number is still bigger than the numbers that have died so far of coronavirus / COVID-19 potential symptoms, is suicide. People who have been taking their own lives this year, 2020, that number is still higher than what is being reported in regards to this virus and in regards to this illness and this disease, that people who are potentially slightly ill anyway, or an underlying issue that they didn't know about, that this virus brings out and makes them ill and makes it worse. So if more people are still dying from suicide, and I'm asking if there's a cure for what it is that they reckon they said that I had. I don't look at it as a diagnosis. They just said I had depression. I've had thoughts, I've had feelings, I've had dark thoughts, I've had dark feelings about myself and about what's happening around me. However, again, I experience guilt. And can you believe that the thought of taking my own life actually made me feel guilty? Because I thought more about how my family and so-called friends would just go, do you know what? She's a coward. She copped out. She took the easy way out. She didn't fight to live. She didn't fight to survive. She wasn't strong. She was weak. And I'm not saying that it's weak people who take their life, because that takes some strength. Trust me. it takes some strength to think about that stuff and plan it, and then even to attempt it. And then what's really horrible about it? What is really horrible about that thought is that you fail at it. You fail at taking your own life. So you feel like you failed everywhere else. You failed your exams at school. You didn't do very well at college. You didn't finish university. You failed in all your relationships. You failed to have a child. You failed to manage your finances properly. You failed to provide yourself with security and a home. You failed, you failed, you failed. And then you get to the end where you think, okay, this is success. And then you fail at that. And you can't even tell anybody. Do you know why? Because they'll just see a failure. That's how I felt. How do you tell people, how do you explain to people that I felt so low that I wanted to take my own life, but I failed at that, just like I failed at everything else? It's ironic. And I think maybe that's what's kind of kept me away from doing it again, or attempting again, if that makes, like, I don't want to fail at anything else. And I know I'm laughing at the moment, and I was just crying. You're probably thinking this girl's bipolar. I'm not. I think as I work through emotions, I take myself into that space of darkness, and then again, like I said, feel experience of guilt. And I'm learning to forgive myself along the way, so I have learned that had I been successful in other areas of my life, I may have been successful with suicide. Who really wants that on their headstone or on their memorable plaque, plate, the tree or the bench that people put out there for you as a form of remembrance? Not died, giving service or in war or tragically by accident. Nah, plotted, schemed and twisted and then succeeded. I don't want to do that no more. I don't want to think like that anymore. I've realised that there's people looking at me, looking up to me, not as in because they're shorter than me, but they're looking at me as a leader, as a role model, as somebody who has been through a lot and can teach people a lot in the early formative years as to not, don't live like how I've lived. Don't make the decisions that I made. I know everybody's going to make their own decisions and have to have their own experiences, but at least be aware of the narcissists in life, the users and the abusers, and learn how to say no and not feel guilty. Learn how to walk away. Again, without looking back, without remorse. Sometimes you have to look back because that person who you're walking away from is chasing you with a knife and they want to stab you in your back. But, they'll get over it. They'll get past the no. So with it being global, international, world mental health awareness, I'm very much aware of my mentality. I'm very much aware of my emotions, my personality, my characteristics, and I started to change the language that I use to describe myself and the world around me, my environment. I had to start speaking positivity, not just into myself, into my head. I had to literally replace, the 100 negative thoughts, just find one positive. And if you can keep on doing that, yeah, your balance is, your scale's a bit unbalanced, you feel that way, but you will keep finding positive stuff. And I know this sounds so cliche in regards to how do you do that? It actually gets to a point where you just want to see yourself not like this. Misery loves company. And considering I'm a loner, I don't want miserable company. This isolation has taught me that I can be happy alone, and on my own. And I can also be happy around people, but yeah, I don't need miserable company. We all have our moments, admittedly, when we just want to vent and let it all out. I get it. And I appreciate the people around me that actually keep me in that place of comfort in their life where they can vent and how they feel comfortable doing that. So I thank you for those of you who do share and vent and rant and rave, and I don't take it personally because it's not at me. And I again thank you for those of you who listen without judgment when I need to have a bitch and a moan. So I just want to leave it there, really. There isn't really a conclusion per se. I think all that's left for me to do, or to continue to show the healing, the nurturing, the growth that I have, and self-love for myself. And then once that blooms more and more and more each day by pouring a little bit in, pouring a little bit in, pouring a little bit in, I'm going to celebrate, because if I had succeeded, I wouldn't be here celebrating 1 year in my place, with my name on a piece of paper. You know, not like it's a mortgage, but yeah, it's been a long road getting here. It's been a long road. Rocky, rough, barefoot, clawing my way along, but through it all, I got some lovely, strong, long nails. An appreciation for life that sometimes when you know it could have been different, it could have been over, if you know what I mean, it does make you live your life, literally live each day, live your life. So I welcome the emotions that come, the happiness, you know, the ecstatic feelings that I have, more so now. The excitement when you make plans, or you know, agree to do something with somebody, agree to do something for yourself, when you find your little quirky things that you like to do, you know. And all those small things add up and make big things. Even if it's one big thing, it's your one big thing. So please just bear in mind that mental ill health can be healed to mental health. And then once we start to establish that healthy mentality, it's a journey that we want to stay on. Because you meet a lot of good people along the way that are also on their healthy mentality journey. So I'll leave it there with gratitude for what I've been through, for what I've learned, what I've seen, what I've said, what I've not said, and forgiveness of self. The world needs to heal, and that's what it's currently been doing. So we were told you can't go out, so go within. But don't go too far deep down your dark tunnel on your own. And hopefully you have someone in your life who's a candle. Because when my flame goes out, there'll be somebody there to relight me from their flame. And if somebody's flame around me goes out, my flame will be lit and I can light theirs, and we'll keep passing it on. We'll keep sharing our light with each other. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I just needed to capture this moment today. So heal the world is probably where I'm at. Let's heal the world one mind at a time. I know somebody else says that, but she'll know that I appreciate her and what she thinks I didn't do. So that's just another story time. Anyway, much love. This is Natural Mystic. I am bouncing back. And I appreciate you all. Namaste, Rastafari, one love, guidance, protection, peace, prosperity, blissful love and light in abundance. Mental health is our future health and future wealth. Pass it on. Take care.